I don't know. I need a lawyer. Frank and Peter went out for dinner and either they're on the way back. Um, thank you, Jeff, for popping in, and Kevin, all the way from England. Kevin, is it okay to mention tomorrow?
Yeah, sure. I was just writing. Yeah. So basically, I've got a limited time in this meeting because I've still got a hell of a lot to organise today before later this afternoon. I shoot off to London because I'm having a hip replacement operation tomorrow in a London hospital. So I've got to get a lot of things sorted. I should only be in hospital for three or 4 days. So the hit to the progress on Cortex Pascal should be limited. So I should I say something about just very briefly that
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely, please.
about to release version 1 early access PDF of Introduction to Cortex Pascal. Um, I've got about 300 pages done, um, but I'm holding back publication because I want to synchronize it with public release 1.0 of Cortex Pascal, which John Assendon is working on. And the only thing that is holding him up is the other half of the company, Gel, who's working on the licensing website. Uh, so it's a one-stop shop for licensing the commercial version, registering components for the ecosystem for Cortex Pascal, etc. The community edition will be free. But as the issue I had before when I uh, did a couple of talks on Cortex Pascal, people started asking me where can I get hold of the software, and John has restricted it to the original backers up until now, and I think that will continue until release. But I've got a lot done, and just about 4 chapters left to write, and some of those are contingent upon the next, just before the release version of Cortex Pascal, which has tidied up a few things. So I want to make sure that the book isn't at odds with the public release version by not catering for the last changes to be made.
Have you enjoyed the process?
No, I've enjoyed writing previous books, but that's because I was starting from a running position, whereas with Cortex Pascal I was starting from a standing position, because my knowledge of JavaScript, website program, etc., was very basic because I've not concentrated on that side of things, and so I had to learn quite a lot about JavaScript in order to be able to interpret the Cortex Pascal, which is targeted at generating JavaScript for websites. Um, and I had nothing to go on from a background previously of writing Cortex Pascal. So, but that's the way to learn. But I've got the scars on my back. So, it's been uh, an eye-opening experience. I can go on for hours, but I don't want to take away from other people's time. But I come from a teaching background, and the competition out there that Delphi has to compete with, Python, Greenfoot. Greenfoot is Java based, but it's a subset of the Java language, which enables students to write code and then put them up on a website so they can share their work with others. Um, and that's been quite successful. And what I wanted to do was turn all the stuff I've done with Delphi into something that I could put up on the website, so that students who got interest in programming could write their programs and then share them with others on share their running programs with others on the web. So Cortex Pascal fits that or provides that missing link. what I've been trying to do over the last 10, 11 years is to support the use of Delphi in education. And I'm afraid it's dropped out of a lot of courses, university and top end of schools, because the competition out there, Python, has a low barrier to entry, and has just got a lot of backing. So it's my last attempt before I pop my clogs, as it were, or whatever the expression is, to leave some legacy that might see Delphi carry on into the future in education. I'll shut up now. I can't hear you, Scott. You're muted.
Yeah, it dropped out again. Okay, there, I'm back. I was just saying, I consider the QUARTEX to be the most impressive Delphi program ever written by anyone in the world, ever. The entire IDE, the language, everything at runtime, the compiler, everything is written in Delphi. The entire IDE is written in Delphi. And developed by one person. It's the most impressive Delphi work I have ever seen. I don't think anything tops it.
No, I've certainly been impressed with it. I've been working with it. I mean, it's a great piece of work, and all credit to John.
And he could have easily chosen to not make it Delphi compatible. His goal was always to be, basically Delphi for the web, and he's done that. He's implemented something that's very closely compatible. You can move a lot of code between the Delphi IDE. I'm not sure how are you going with like projects and forms? Are they compatible, or I know a lot of the code's compatible, but I'm not expecting forms to be compatible.
As an exercise, I took a program from my Delphi book, the sliding puzzles, the eight squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I just mapped it straight into QUARTEX Pascal, minimum modification. So now what would only run on a desktop now runs on the in a web browser. So I mean, there are a couple of things that I think might at first for a Delphi programmer find a little bit irksome. It's the way that components are placed on the form. Instead of selecting from the component menu and then clicking on the form, you actually have to hold the selection and drag it across to the form.
Right. So it's a drag and drop instead of a click.
It's little things like that, slight differences, but I think that probably will change some stage in the future. You've got the ability to be able to write in the Delphi way for event handling, or you can write in the Java way with delegates. So you've got the best of both worlds. It's your choice. The graphics is close, but it doesn't have things like set pixel or read pixel and so on. There's a 3D library, which is just the 3DS library wrapped up, which is there to use. There's no Node.js, which is obviously not in Delphi, but you've got support for JSON as you have in Delphi. So I didn't have any problem mapping across things I'd written in Delphi with minor modifications. One of the first things I did was to take some where are we, 1985, 90 programs that my students wrote in about 1988, which were written for DOS, and then I used the support for DOSBox within QUARTEX Pascal to put them up on the web. just because that's I just wanted to see if I could do it.
So you're saying that was
And
DOSBox running through a web browser with
yeah,
QUARTEX
that's it.
hosting it, kind of thing? Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. Sorry, if I'm not making much sense. Um, so I had a beautiful one. We have a world famous hospital called Stoke Mandeville Hospital, which was set up during the Second World War as a burns unit, and then it morphed into a paraplegics unit, and it was where the paraplegic games started. And they have a hospital radio station, which one of my students, as a part-time job after school, used to go down and help out at, and they had a vast collection of records. 2000 odd or something like that, which they used to play over the radio station, and they would have to manually draw up the play what they were going to play at in a half-hour slot or whatever. So he wrote a program before database. It was indexed sequential to basically allow anybody to pick the records they wanted to play with the timings and fit it into that half-hour slot. So that was one of the exercises that it's timeless because it's still useful. So I put that up on the web, and it wasn't even the students' qualification project. It was just something he did halfway through the course out of interest. So yeah, that's again testament that I've taken something that was written in it was pro Pascal, which was an ISO standard Pascal from years ago. And okay, so it's only running the exe through the through the DOS box, but I thought that was rather nice as well. So there's a lot of stuff out there in JavaScript that can be embedded in QUARTEX Pascal just by wrapping it in a wrapper and so on, and making it accessible. Database support is nearly there. So there will be support for MySQL and a couple of other databases initially. Can't think of the other two for the moment. But it's very advanced, in terms of its usability and the ability to be able to create something that looks like a desktop, but it runs in a browser. And I think that is John's ultimate aim, to be able to have desktop systems running on a browser, so it could be in a tablet or whatever, that's just cut down in time and only supports a browser. So
yeah, it's definitely a big gap for Delphi. I mean, Embarcadero was tried a few times over the years. They had it was like a PHP version that ran within the IDE at one point, and then I had a license for that, and then it basically
I did as well.
It just disappeared.
Yes,
just gone. The
like
next release just gone. And that was quite good. That was basically, you're writing Delphi code and it deployed as PHP, and I didn't have to worry about the PHP. It took care of all of that behind the scenes, so I never saw the PHP. But then nothing. And at the moment they kind of rely on like TMS Web, and there's a couple of
which
other
is quite
add-ons
good.
but it's not native. I'd really like to see Delphi having a deployment option where they can compile to WebAssembly. Don't think we're going to get it. I've been raising that flag for a couple of years with Embarcadero at conferences, trying to whisper in people's ears, but I don't think it's going to happen.
No.
It's a pity this thing is a QUARTEX, because they could have had John working with them building this for Delphi, and it could have been built more like integrated in the Delphi IDE, and just a deployment option where you just say, instead of compiling to Win64, just compile to QUARTEX. He could have done that by himself. So missed opportunity. But
there's some politics involved in it. I mean, I did mention to Embarcadero that this was something they should look at, and I got the impression that it doesn't fit with their current strategy, basically. So there's something there that is making it a little bit trickier to engage with John and so on. So I think, but
it just wasn't going to happen. And I think John probably made a good decision, realizing that it wasn't going to happen, and push ahead with what he did, rather than trying hoping it was going to happen with Embarcadero.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically, it's very Delphi-ish. It's, I kind of think of it as kind of being part of Delphi. It's so like Delphi. If you're a
Yeah.
Delphi developer, you can pick it up almost instantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that close a match.
No, I've tried teaching all sorts of languages that, embraced whatever's coming along, just to dip my toe in the water to see whether am I still doing the right thing. When I used to teaching Delphi, and I've never found anything to match Object Pascal in terms of ease of comprehension. The teaching a discipline that students can stick to, and so on.
We just don't, how many times do you hear issues about overflow errors causing corruption and people hacking into systems by using we don't even deal with that. It's just not an issue. Just, you just say set a string equal to a value. It's not going to overflow into something else and, start formatting your hard drive or something like that.
Yeah, no. I think
that.
maybe it will come full circle, and that people begin to realize that Delphi isn't that old thing that people moved away from some time ago. It's now a modern rapid application development system that supports a lot of things that are of current interest.
Yeah, they've moved pretty rapidly last couple of years. They went through a bit of a slow patch around the early XE days, but yeah, the last couple of years they've been on fire. They're putting out good, strong releases like every year for a major one. You get like a major update every 6 months, something like that. It's been that really good last couple of years.
Yeah. So for me, I did use, when I say I'm not that familiar with it, I did used to teach a little bit of JavaScript to students some time ago, and I just found it so difficult to use. But the nice thing about QUARTEX, it doesn't prevent you from dropping down into JavaScript if there's something you can't do directly in QUARTEX Pascal. Because you can embed JavaScript into a QUARTEX Pascal program.
Is it mostly compile time errors? Because one of the things I find with JavaScript is just with the technology stack that I work with, where there's JavaScript in the piece, I don't find out if some code is broken, like syntactically incorrect, until I actually try to run that bit of code, right? Like, there's no compile button. You don't get like an instant, hey, this you're an idiot. This code doesn't even compile, right? And what actually happens is, and I'm not 100% sure if this is generic JavaScript or just with the stack that I've got, where there's a whole bunch of add-ons there that's in the Oracle landscape. But what happened is you write a ton of JavaScript, and it could be in like a page header kind of thing, so it's up near the top. And if one character is wrong, like you miss a dot or a semicolon, it goes, well, this is invalid, so clearly this can't be JavaScript. I'm just going to ignore it, right? But you don't get an error message. Right? So all of your code, which is all the page setup code, it just didn't run. And it's one of the most frustrating things I find with JavaScript. You don't know if it's broken until you actually run it.
No, that's right. I've relied upon the debugger in the browser to be able to get messages to pin.
I got to a point where I used a typical trick in this and some other JavaScript stacks, where what I do in the page startup code, I have like a field on the screen which is showing an error message like, hey, this is not working. And then at the very bottom of my JavaScript code, I hide that field. So the page fires up, the field is there. If all of that JavaScript doesn't run, I see a message on the screen saying, hey, it's invalid. And that's actually, it's silly, but it's extremely useful. At least at least nothing ran.
There is a debugger within QUARTEX Pascal. It was introduced about 2 months ago, and that enables you to debug. You can set the breakpoints in your QUARTEX Pascal Delphi code, and step through and identify where the JavaScript error is. I think there's still work in progress on this, but
it's a step through debug. You can step through the code. Is that how it works? Okay, terrific.
So that is a tremendous help compared with using the support in the browser. the developer tools, and so on. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure how the program is running, whether you've got time or what. I mean, I could show you a quick overview of the book, if it's not going to hold anything up, or.
Yeah, can you tell us, just run down the chapter? Is it like a getting started from scratch, or what sort of knowledge does it assume?
So I wrote it from the point of view of somebody who perhaps doesn't know very much about JavaScript, doesn't know very much about Object Pascal, and so is led by the hand initially, but it then advances through to writing a HTTP server and so on using Node.js. So it does step up to be quite advanced later on, but it's not one of those books where there's a lot of assumed prior knowledge, etc. So that's the way I write my books. I don't assume any prior knowledge, but nevertheless, there's enough to satisfy both ends of the spectrum, from the novice to the expert.
How many pages is the book, Kevin?
Well, this has been the most difficult thing, because normally I've been able to in advance work out a draft of how many pages it's going to take to cover the material. But in this case, it's just however many pages it takes to describe what I want to describe, and I don't know what I want to describe until
are you aiming at printed books or just?
It will be both printed and PDF. So that's the way. So the Delphi book I wrote a little while ago, that was 1,200 pages long. So that's a big print book. And sorry, I've been tidying out because I've got but I can't find it. Lay my head. So this is up to 300 pages. I guess it'll come in about 360, 400. But so at the moment it's got 23 chapters. And I mean, if it's possible to. Well, the host is disabled screen sharing. I could just show you the index if it's possible to share the screen.
I might need to switch that option on. Just try and share your screen. If it doesn't,
okay.
I'll look into it. And Paul, while I'm here, going to make you a co-host.
I was just going to say, I'm just going to say good day to Lex, who doesn't have a camera, is down in Denmark, and Amal, who's at his daughter's soccer practice. Is that right? But sorry, correct me if I say your name wrong. Amal, I met at one of the Python, maybe the first Python meeting I went to. We just happened to sit down next to each other. I happened to mention Turbo Pascal, and he mentioned Delphi, but he was working for Horizon Digital in Murray Street, that we were looking at the like podcasting facilities and that sort of thing. And I think he's been crazy busy and managed to join us today. Oh yeah, soccer practice has been keeping him away from meetings. I'll just also say as a bit of a summary that Kevin here is from the UK and a long time author on Delphi and Pascal, and involved in the education sector. And there's a guy, John Assenden, who has been writing a web Delphi, a web, like what do you call it? Backend? No.
Delphi for the web.
Yeah, Delphi for the web, basically, that can be. You write it in Delphi.
It's very similar code to Delphi, so it supports all the Object Pascal you find in Delphi, but it cross compiles to JavaScript.
Right, and the guy has been writing, like, I don't know, some million whatever line of codes in a couple of years, all on his own, because he's a madman. And just to give you some context about what Kevin's about to talk about. And sorry, I meant to check with you, Bob, whether you were aware of the QUARTEX thing or not, but well, there's a little summary for you, just in case. Please go on. Sorry, Kevin.
Pardon?
Oh, please go on. Oh, the other thing.
Yep.
You have a surgery tomorrow. We won't keep you for 5 hours, okay? So,
I've got,
so
also I've got a dental appointment at 1 o'clock to fix some work that needs completing. So I'm a bit of a rush today. But
all righty. You set a time limit. We'll keep you to it.
okay, I'll yeah, probably no more than 10 minutes, and then I'm going to have to shoot to get some things organized and tidied up. Is screen sharing on now? Can you see this screen?
I think Scott might have to specify that one.
I'll just
Oh,
try
or
that.
I could. Or I could.
There you go, hunting for the option.
There we go. All participants. You should be good, Kevin.
Okay, I've got the book up on the screen, the PDF version.
Have you shared yet?
Yep. Oh, hang on a minute. I thought I had done, but let's
What
try
I'll
again.
do, Paul, we can send him a request to share. That might make it easy for him to share.
Let me have a look. Sorry, yeah, share.
Green. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's coming through.
Okay, so let's just move that out of the way. So this is the front page. This is the Hawkesbury River at what's the name, Point, Cottage Point, north of Sydney, south of Sydney. Yeah, it is north of Sydney. So this is a friend of ours who lives on the Hawkesbury River. So this is the early access edition. It's work in progress. So let me just bring up okay, so the first two chapters are about the different models that one can present through the web browser, the box model, the windowed application. So it looks like a desktop window. Support for audio files. Then I do an application sliding puzzle and its solution using style sheets. You can add styles to any component. The QUARTEX Pascal system itself comes with a CSS file full of styles, or you can load your own CSS file to apply your own styling, etc. Event handling is slightly trickier with JavaScript because you have this bubble effect, which means you've got to be, it's not like Delphi where you assign an event handler to a particular widget, and if you click that widget, then only that event handler fires. In JavaScript, there is a tree that is traversed when an event occurs. So anything that hangs on that tree that knows about that event will get triggered. So that is little things like that catch you out initially, but so that there are some differences. Accessing YouTube videos, timers, graphics. So I've just been working on developing the graphics. Obviously, basic string handling, almost identical to Delphi. Arrays, dynamic arrays are at the core of QUARTEX Pascal. Functional programming, support for higher order functions, map, filter, reduce. So I took what I wrote in my book on Delphi on functional programming and just mapped it across into QUARTEX Pascal. Debugging, Node.js. I've got a HTTP server. I've got a client side with a form, so data can be entered through the form and then posted to an HTTP server, which can store, process that data. Databases will come. I want to write quite a bit on linear algebra because the history of this is that I wanted to be able to create some physics, maths demos to put on the web. So I used something called Manim, which comes out of Brown's University in the States. which is based on Python. And a lot of the demos that they've created using MANIM are about linear algebra. And obviously, you know, it underpins a lot of physics as well as a lot of maths and so on. I want to put a chapter in on linear algebra because I think you could use Delphi now to create maths and physics demonstrations, which could be posted on the web. Apex charts, Eric van der Val, is it like, wrapped the JavaScript charting library, so it made it available to QUARTEX Pascal, and actually packaged up the components so they're now embedded into QUARTEX Pascal. Three-dimensional graphics is there, and then this is quite a because unlike Delphi, which is linear in the way it processes code, JavaScript is asynchronous. So that's one major difference that one has to take account of when writing the program, because if you're trying to affect a widget on a form, you don't know when that form has actually embedded itself into the document object model. So in other words, exists within, fully complete within the web browser. So John is built in things like, let's say we've got a canvas.whenReady. So that you have to have this control because of the asynchronous behavior to make sure you're not trying to do things to objects which are not fully ready, etc. Yeah, so how can I quickly show this? So I go through some basics, which is using CSS to configure a widget, which is a button, so to put round corners on it. I explain the document object model, making no assumptions that people are familiar with it, etc., etc. And then I show how you can access the methods and properties of the DOM, so you can actually get the object within the web browser that's controlling everything you see on the web browser. So various ways you can access the document object model. So that's all available within QUARTEX Pascal. And then I have a quick an example to whet the appetite, playing videos, which just wraps up the HTML5's video element. So that's an example that basically I've, in a few lines in QUARTEX Pascal, I've been able to put up a video with controls to run it and stop it and so on. So it covers QUARTEX Pascal covers the three basic visual application project types: dynamic, boxed, windowed, but there are others as well. But these are the core essentially. So I've used dynamic and windowed an awful lot. Windowed because I want to have a desktop appearance, dynamic when I don't, basically. So that's a bit of, I always find this in JavaScript, it's not always logically clear when you're setting margins, border, and padding. There's a collapsing of border, collapsing of margins and padding under certain circumstances. It's just so confusing. So a lot of that is removed by QUARTEX Pascal, simplifying, creating a box model, and so on. You can get it the viewports, etc. And then I get on to using CSS to style, etc. So the mechanism is, I'll make it a bit bigger, but it's basically well, this is the form, and just adding a class to the form, QTX my background 3, so that can be used and applied to widgets on the form, etc. Creating a windowed application, so you get the standard desktop window, and it's quite easy to do. And then I created a music player. So because there's support there for doing this, because it's already there in the HTML5 or leverage via the JavaScript and so on under the hood, but it's not awkward to use because you're coding it in Object Pascal, and then that is being cross-compiled to JavaScript. So I can play music. I made a piano keyboard, you know, to play through a web browser, just to show the sort of things that you can do. I've made up a piano Twinkle Twinkle Little Star sequence to play Twinkle Twinkle Star automatically. You can access plain text files, load, save, or you can use so that's the example of the plain text file piece of Shakespeare, Sonnet 116. JSON files. I have got access to data about all the world universities through a REST server. So it's got a hold of the JSON format of all this information, and then created this website where you can actually pick a country, and then you could pick the university in that country, and then you can find out more information about those universities. Again, just to sort of gradually introduce the different types of widget that you can place on forms, etc., building up a sort of ecosystem of how to create user interfaces, which I'm not an expert in. I'm absolutely dreadful at writing in user interfaces. Okay, so the structure of the JSON file, etc., etc. This is the form that's being designed with the widgets. So there's a memo box, label, button, list box, combo box, label, etc. Just like Delphi. So there's a structure chart, just like Delphi. So a bit of code. There's the fetch JSON code. Okay. So let's move on. This is the exercise I took from my Delphi book, the 8 puzzle problem. The analysis is the same, etc., etc. And what I've done is I've created computable layouts, initial layouts. There's 23,000 of them, which are computable, and there are 23,000 which are not computable. And I actually use Delphi to generate the list of configurations, starting configurations. So I used T-cell, form. I could have used panels. This is the class diagram, exactly the same as for the Delphi book. So class definition, a constructor, cell state. Puzzle form, some other things that I need. And this is the overall puzzle 8 class. So this is the load JSON into permutations array, because all the initial all 23,000 are computable, and so one is chosen at random from an array of 23,000 possible permutations. Move cell up, move cell down, move cell right, etc., etc. So cut a long story short, this is what it looks like when the puzzle is solved. And the code, you see, code is Object Pascal essentially. And I will create an AI system for actually solving it by computer, and I'll use Manhattan distances to do that. Using style sheets, I got heavily criticized on the Quartex Pascal developer forum for putting this up when somebody said, "Can you create a website?" I quite like these colors, but apparently this is very 1980s. So that just sums me up basically, I think. Very old fashioned. But it wasn't even a website. It was there as an aid memoir when I was giving a talk to the UK developers group in London. So what I wanted to do was have examples to try at the left-hand side here, links to a chapter, download source code, and then over here, I wanted to link to things that John had written on his WordPress site. So I wanted it all there, easy for me to click on when I was doing a talk. And I knocked this up using a CSS file that contained all the formatting that I wanted. All the styling, sorry, not formatting. And then there was an example chapter in the middle there. So that's what I created very, very quickly for a talk with. Okay, so sorry, I accidentally clicked the mouse when I shouldn't have. Event handling, just the basic exercise to move a character around. I've loaded icons into these buttons, which is very easy to do. I could have put an adventure map as a background there and wrote all the navigation code, but that would involve a lot of work, so I've just left it as that. And I tend to go into a lot of detail because I make no assumption about the level of expertise of the users. So I say, put one of these on there, put one of these on there, set the line properly. So I tend to find a lot of books that I've read omit something that then causes you a huge amount of time wasting trying to work out why doesn't it work, and it's because it was one missing thing, one missing configuration in the property inspector, whatever that was not done when it should have been. So this is one way of dealing with the asynchronous nature of JavaScript. You can write a anonymous procedure here, which will be called after 500 milliseconds. So this is another way of doing it. So let me just, so it's saying execute this delay of 500 milliseconds, and at the end of that, run this procedure. Now, for instance, when loading the permutation into that 8 puzzle, it was necessary to wait before trying to assign the permutations to the tiles, about 500 milliseconds. So this is what I used for that purpose. Okay. So assigning the icons. How did I do that? Okay, so there's a constant definition. So you can embed HTML in a widget. So you normally, in Delphi you have a caption for a widget. You can also set the equivalent. It's called inner HTML if you don't want to set the caption. But if you use the property inner HTML, you can style it. So that means I was able to get an icon onto a button very easily. So I've used this constant again and again and again in various places. What else do I do? Oh, this is the event bubbling. Because of the way the document object model works, there is a capture the event phase and there's a bubbling phase. And if you don't want an event to re-trigger on a parent component, you have to stop the bubbling. So there's support there for stopping bubbling and so on in various ways. And this was this example actually created problems if bubbling was ignored, because all of a sudden you'd be trying to alter something and at the same time, which what you didn't want, this character will be moving around prematurely or whatever. Okay. So let me just, this is work in progress. I've got a strong bias towards Australia here. So Australian pelican, blue mountains, wombat, and so on. So this, yeah, okay. Let me just. So this is blank page because I haven't filled in the text yet for this. So, oh dear, that's more accessing YouTube videos, and basically it uses our wrapper for support for YouTube, playing YouTubes and so on, YouTube videos. So my Delphi lessons are up there on the web on YouTube. They're also on my website, and I use the other support in QUARTEX bar on my website to play those lessons. So you can go to my website and play my Delphi lessons. Timers, various support for different timers. That's a chapter under construction. So you do have a lot of support for accessing time, date, etc. Very much like along the lines of Delphi. So working with graphics, you have a canvas and you have a context, which all the commands are stored. The context sits above the campus, as it were. So you have the usual move to, line to, and unlike Delphi, the line to doesn't contain the starting and the end points, so you have a separate move to. So that's a simple example of drawing a line. The canvas coordinates, y going down, x going across. This is a 2D drawing surface. You do have the ability to be able to use HSL, hue, saturation, and lightness, or you can use RGB. So there are conversion routines for both. You have a path object. You don't have the same degree of control as you do in JavaScript, where you can have a shadow path. So you can set up your own path object in the background and then bring it to bear. You only have one principal path object, and that basically stores all the commands for a path. And I think for this, you've got a closed path. So if you've drawn two sides of a triangle, if you then cause closed path, it remembers the path. And so it says, I've got to go from there to there to close it, etc. This is very elementary stuff at the moment. I'm still working on this. That's the closed path which completes the triangle. So etc. You have the ability to be able to translate the origin to anywhere you want. You can rotate the axes, you can scale them. It's all available within JavaScript, sorry. So that's a scale. I think that's you've got the usual filling and so on. You can draw rectangles, you can draw arcs, you can draw circles, ellipses. This is an animation that I created. Was this the animation? So I've got a rotating lines animation. Sorry, yeah. So basically creating that out of rotating a line using a timer, basically. And then I've got a decaying sine curve Now, this is the other example of dealing with asynchronous. It says when the form is ready, then actually make the form full screen. So this widget refers to this self here. So I get a full screen, and then it draws a decaying sine wave. Here's a fractal. It's a Barnsley fern. So a bit of maths. This is basically what I want to do more of, and this will probably be a second book where we start to get into stuff that I'm particularly interested in. And this is why I need linear algebra. I need support for matrices and determinants, and I also need that for Fourier transforms, fast Fourier transforms, etc., which I want to include later, but not in this book, but in another book. So these are rotation, translation, and scaling matrices. So basically, if you think about a fern, well, let's have a look at what the fern is. Let's go to the. That's what it draws essentially. So it's self-similar because it's a fractal. So the idea is that you take a smaller. This is why that you need the matrix. You scale down the original so it's smaller. You rotate it a little bit, and you translate it. And very, very gradually, you build up the left and right-hand side of the fern. So the code for that, I mean, essentially, it's just exercising those matrices in a way that basically chooses these parameters differently each iteration, because it's an iterative algorithm essentially. And it's called a Barnsley fern. So I wanted to do something that could show you that it's quite capable of doing something I would consider quite advanced graphics, but also it's amazingly fast at doing it. Because it's the John
we
has
should give
written.
you a time warning, Kevin, I guess.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
We don't want you to stop, but you may have to.
Yeah. Okay, the string handling, I've just lot copied this from my Delphi book because it's no different. Dynamic arrays, this is block copied from my Delphi book. Okay. This is the functional programming. A lot of copying from my Delphi book because it's a little, not much to change essentially. So what do? I very simple example of times table, but non-assumptions closure. That's the times table that I wrote in QUARTEX Pascal. And then you get onto higher order functions. I do doing calculus with higher order functions, a derivative, etc., etc. So, I mean, here's a use of arrays, dynamic arrays, T array of integers. So it's exactly the same as for Delphi. Built-in map filter, reduce fold, etc., etc. And then I do my wordless example, which I did for Delphi, which is basically spitting out words of a given length. So there's a dictionary behind this, so this program has to read the dictionary exactly the same way that I did for Delphi. So except you have to take care of the asynchronous nature of JavaScript. So before you can populate the combo box with for example, if you've chosen words of length 5, there might be I don't know, about 10,000, something like that. Is that maybe? I don't know. So you have to wait until the combo box is ready. Then you can start adding elements to it. So that's an example. Words of length 8. There are 40,000 words there, and it does that fairly quickly. Debugging under construction. And this is the Node.js. You have to install it on your machine. So I've gone through the details of how to install it. And then I've made a basic HTTP server that operates at the console level. Because within QUARTEX Pascal, you still have access to a console. So you can use write line. So here, this is the server creating the header and then writing the response hello world and then ending the response. And this is, it's listening on port 8888. There's support for using open maps. So one of the things I did for the Delphi book using TMS was to take a map of the New South Wales and also data I got from New South Wales Education Department, which is all the schools. And then I placed the location of all the schools in and around Sydney. And then I provided some basic information if you hovered over it for those schools. Basically as a sort of aid to my daughter and son-in-law choosing a secondary school for my granddaughter. They live in Sydney. So basically there's the going to the server and getting this hello world response back. And then I also asked what method was used by this browser to get this response. It was get. And what was the remote address? Well, this is just localhost. So you've got the basics there. And then I explain sockets and so on, just in case it's new territory for the readers and so on. Go into the detail of the TCP handshake, the end-to-end principle. And then I've got a example here with creating a server, setting its listening port, setting up. Now, this actually is the address of the handle request, and this is the address of the handle error. So very similar to Delphi, in which you can assign the address of something. So when an on-server request comes in, the handler is here already to be called, callback, well, handler function. So yeah, handle the request. So basically, the server is just writing back some information about the requests, the connections, and then this HTML formatted message hello world. So that's what you get back in the browser. So now this is the user interface for creating a project. So you do have different types of project that you can create, or you can create something from a blank template, basically, if you want. Okay, I just nearly finished. I did a simple Celsius to Fahrenheit, exactly the same exercise that I did in the Delphi book, to get temperature conversion. So this is the client, and the server is responding with the conversion, essentially. This is some code to handle the message from the server. So as I say, it does support WebSockets, so we can get access to information. I've got a WebSocket client. Explain how to set that up using buttons, labels, memo boxes, and so on. So this creates the client. This sets up some handlers on message on after disconnect. This is a WebSocket connection. This is a way, if the form is resized, this self-adjusts things. You've got access to handles. So that means you can, in this section here, drop into JavaScript. Notice the equal sign now. And here I've decided to add an event listener resize. So on window resize. So if you can't do it directly in Cortex Pascal, you can drop down into JavaScript to leverage what's available in JavaScript if it's not yet possible in Cortex Pascal. John has added a lot of delicate handlers, but not everyone yet. So that, you know, it's coming, but you're not stopped from doing what you need to do because you've got access to JavaScript in this way. So yeah, I won't get. It's just one thing. Yeah. So let me just go through. Explain how to host the WebSocket server on a remote site. So I have a website that I can set up port forwarding, you know, for security reasons, and it can run an instance of Node.js. So I can take my server code, which I've written in Cortex Pascal, but by the, you know, when it's transpiled to JavaScript, I just port that over to this web server, this external web server, and I've now got a web server. So it's a very simple mechanism for hosting server code that's written in Cortex Pascal, but transpiled to JavaScript. As long as you've got access to a web server that supports Node.js, and most web servers support Node.js. So I've got an HTTP server example which handles form data. Now, I apologize. So you've got things like initialization and so on, which is how I read some file information, etc. Just the same as you have initialization in Delphi. So running out of inspiration, I just took an example I wrote years ago for teaching HTML forms to my students. I'm a bit embarrassed about this, but you see, it's a film on videotapes, which is very odd. No longer exists. But it's got everything there to illustrate what you can do with a form. So I don't know what you substitute something else for this, but I'd run out of inspiration by the time I wrote this. So basically, I've got a client-side form that collects all this data. So here's the HTML, because I had already written it years ago to teach my students some HTML form handling and so on. So that's the HTML. I'm not a web designer, so I'm going to apologize in advance if you're cringing at this. So what have I got here? I've got, so opening a file for writing, and I can write some data. So this will be on the server side, collected the form data, and I want to save it somewhere. Because John hasn't written the database access code yet. I mean, I could have taken some JavaScript and wrapped it up, but I just don't have time. So this is saving that data to a file for later processing. So it's collecting the form data here, sending it across the internet to a remote web server. So that's my web server in the States, collecting that data. So I don't think I'll go into the detail of this. So so this is the contents of file. So I decided I would create separate files for each form data and index them accordingly, surname, date of birth. And I had to do some string processing, which is, again, it's just standard Delphi. And this is the data that I accepted. So somebody who lives in Dingley-Dale, county is imaginary, country is Never Neverland, and it's sid@nevernever.co.uk. So, I mean, that's covers what I've done so far. Database is under construction, and it will have an index, but I've got some appendices. So if how do I do the tricky bits in, like configuring a title and an icon for the project? So I just put this into an index, quick lookup, and etc. How to do it, how to create. So just a bit of finesse, etc. So it uses a standard favicon.ico that most self-respecting browsers would support. It would just look, browser will look for a favicon.ico and so on. Creating a delegate event handler at runtime. If you're so inclined, you can actually create, let's say, on-click event handler at runtime. So, so you can configure everything you like, if you like. You don't have to rely on the IDE for your componentry and property setting. You can do it all in code. And here is where I add a mouse enter delegate, which is an event handler, essentially. So I don't know, I've got a picture, I've forgotten. So this basically puts up this. John has actually got a modal form, but I've created a modal form here, without any rounded edges or borders or anything like that, to collect dimensions. So that's where I've got. So you see, it's nearly 300 pages, essentially. So, and that cover picture was Cottage Point, Cowan Creek, Sydney, New South Wales. Sorry, I hope I haven't sent you all to sleep.
Not at all.
Not at all.
So that's so much to take in. Again, I have to remind you about the time, but yeah, Lex, who's in Denmark, was curious about how it compares to TMS Web Core, but I don't think we got time to answer that. Probably, right?
I you know, I have to try and remember how, because it's some time since I've worked with TMS. What I yeah, in a nutshell, no, I can't answer it. You have a lot of componentry that you use with TMS, whereas with QUARTEX Pascal, you are really just programming in the way you program for the desktop. So it's seamless generation of JavaScript. You don't have to think, I need this TMS component, I need that TMS component. So in the IDE for Delphi, you would go to your component palette and you would find the component you need, you'd put it on the form, and then you'd configure it. So QUARTEX Pascal obviates the need to do that. But I like TMS. There are a lot of things that you can do in TMS. There are a lot of library component support in TMS that's not yet there in QUARTEX Pascal. I mean, I'm just thinking of the linear algebra stuff, the Fourier transform stuff, which is there. Let me just sorry, I'm just a minute. Let me think.
It must open up a whole heap of possibilities. I did when the Embarcadero first brought out T1 was it, Edge browser
Yep.
to like update their pretty ordinary, web browser. Was pretty ancient at that stage and was just basically Internet Explorer. I made up a few, like browser windows that just to call some d3.js graphs, just to put
Yep.
them on the screen as a test and obviously this would integrate with that no problem, right? And
Yep. No, absolutely. So you have two options. When you're developing, you can either you just open the browser, whatever the default browser is for your machine, or you can use the internal browser, which is based on Edge. So it's entirely up to you. So in terms of the kind of ecosystem for the turnaround time between compiling, running, testing, and so on, it's a lot easier than I think than using TMS. Sorry, I just bring up the TMS stuff because I haven't done it since about 3 or 4 years now. There just aren't enough hours in the day. But if I bring up Delphi.
I don't know what other people are seeing, but okay.
Sorry, this is the 1200 pages, how to program effectively in Delphi. So let me just have a look at the TMS.
I think I picked up in Delphi. This is a book he's written.
Yeah, we tried to picture it for like 5 hours.
Sorry, it takes a lot to look. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I'm just going to the index to try and find I think this one has got links on. So I'm looking at the TMS. Where are the TMS? Sorry. TMS software components. Oh, oops. Broken link. Sorry. Wait a minute. So it's 1023. So sorry. What am I doing? What am I doing? Not that one. I want to go here. 1023. 1023. So basically you have all these components which are already configured to generate the JavaScript behind the screen, which you don't have that in Cortex Pascal. What you're essentially doing is programming in the Delphi way. So you're looking for a button. So it's not a web button. It may just happen to be called a TQX button. But there's no differentiation between what you put on the desktop, as it were, and what you need for the browser. It's one and the same thing. But this TMS is a bolt-on to Delphi. So Delphi is not targeted at the web; it's targeted at the desktop. So that's why TMS is done in the way it's done. So you do get your index.html, which is the same as in Cortex Pascal.
This was there, but it's just a new
So you do have this support for maps in Cortex Pascal.
Yeah, it was blank.
So this is TMS. So you can put a marker on a map, you can measure distances and so on with TMS.
This side.
So you've got access to the street view with TMS. Not sure that that is available yet in Quartex Pascal. As I say, you can do the measured distances. Not sure that that is yet available in Quartex Pascal. I just haven't fully explored this aspect of Quartex Pascal, and that's the that's using an Xdata server, which is specific to TMS. But you could use you know, what's available already, what I've shown you today, to do the same thing. So this is the example I was creating for Sydney. I should have done one for Perth, shouldn't I?
Yes.
Do you have any family in Perth?
So yeah. So and obviously the support for databases is a little bit more advanced in TMS at the moment. So I had to use SQL. I use SQL Server. I got the information from the NSW Education website. It's publicly available data, so you're allowed to download it, etc. Yeah. So yeah, that's it's a different beast. From the point of view of education, TMS is free to education, but from the point of view of having something which is not too complicated to be, in order to be able to do a range of tasks, Quartex Pascal is simpler. You know, because everything goes out, it's predicated on a browser, but essentially. Although, as I said, you can either use the console in the browser through the developer tools, or you've got, if you use the internal web browser, you've actually got the console, which is within the IDE. So as I say, if let's say let's load this one. So I could use this internal web browser, and it could draw the fern like so. So that's all within. This is the console output down here. So I could use write lines in here to give me information. That's how I, you know, in a very old-fashioned way, debugging the program. I wanted some diagnostics. What was the state of this variable? Okay, because the debugger support is still being developed, so I can't set watches and listen and so on. So it would come out down here. Yeah. So
Funny things going on, I feel.
yeah. So so if I go back to the designer, this is the widget palette. So
Sorry, what are we looking at, Kevin?
sorry, this is the Quartex Pascal IDE. So I've just run a program within the IDE using the inbuilt web browser. But what I could have done is I could have just opened the browser and
Is this figure 47.324? Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah.
Or possibly you're looking at something we're not sharing at the moment?
Oh, so I did beg your pardon. Okay, so what have I done? Let's have a look. Yeah. What have I done? I've done something. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I've disconnected myself from the share by the looks of it. Yeah, I know what I've done. Yeah. Sorry, no, I haven't disconnected. I haven't connected the share. So can you see it now?
Yep, fine.
Oh, okay, so I do beg your pardon.
No problem.
So this is the Quartex Pascal IDE. New project, open project, closed project, preferences, and compile, build, open in browser, and then here I've got the widget palette.
Not seeing
So I've got all the standards, date picker,
something that we're not seeing.
image, scroll boxes, search edit, time edit.
Kevin, all we're
Yeah.
looking at the moment, we're seeing a browser page showing the fern.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
But are you supposed to be somewhere else right now?
No, no, don't worry.
Okay, just check. I'll keep checking.
Yeah. How about that?
Yes. Oh, nice. Oh, yes.
Okay.
I meant to ask you, do we write QUARTEX like in Delphi or in a Delphi-like environment?
It's a Delphi-like environment. Okay. So if I close this project, if I just do new project, and let's call it ADUG 25 Jan. And what I want to do is I just want to create, let's say, let's create a dynamic project. And let's just create. So this is what I get. So this is all the support for the JavaScript target. These are my forms. So this describes the structure of the form. It's like the DFM. This is the Pascal. So so this is the code, and so I have my constructor here. I have my ability to be able to style the object, and I have my destructor. So what I would do is, let's say I want to put a button on the form, and this is the difference between Delphi. I can't click and then point. I have to drag. So let's say that I want to add a delegate to this form. So add a delegate on mouse click, and now I do that, and so let's and we'll run that. So let's build it. Let's open in a browser, and there, hello ADUG. Okay, so just very similar to creating an event handler in Delphi. So sorry, I've got so many screens here. So going back to the what components are available at the moment. So we've got the standard ones that you'd expect to find in Delphi: memo, month edit, scroll bar. And then you've got the ones that come with Apex charts, the jQuery, sorry. So that's built in. Then you've got the structured elements, the columns, context box, flow control, forms. So you can have multiple forms. You can create a new window if you like. Then you have grids, combo boxes, list boxes. Then you have the standard HTML5. Now for graphics, I would use that one there, and then I'd just create a context, and then I'd write my commands to the context. Essentially, if you want to do some structuring, DOM divs, labels, etc. And over here, you can see the structure of what you've created so far. This is your property inspector over here. So let's say if I wanted to just put a caption on here, click me. That's the standard way of doing it. So you have to. This is another little quirk that needs to be sorted out. It will change eventually, but that is something that is yet to be fully ironed out. That you can't see it, but it hasn't changed the inner text. It will when you run it, but it won't at the moment in the designer. So it's changed it there. But what you can do is you can write in HTML, so you could style the caption that you put on here instead of using this inner text. The other things that are a little bit tricky because of the way in which widgets flow in a web browser. You've got to take account of positioning as well. But generally speaking, if you don't touch these things here, you should be all right. So that I think I probably overdone it a little bit.
Thanks so
Sorry.
much.
No, that is great.
I'm going to stop.
Great. Oh, when you were showing us your book and the title, the table of contents, I
Yes.
took a screenshot. Is it okay to share that, like on
Yes.
the ADUG
Yeah.
forum?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Just as a,
Yeah. If what I have done in the past is made available a pre-release copy of the PDF, a complimentary copy for anybody that's interested in giving me feedback. This time round, though, the difficulty is that it's a little bit trickier to be able to evaluate something when you don't have access to the software which the book is written for. And that's because John won't, release the software at the moment to anybody who didn't originally back the project. I can understand that. But
Yeah.
having said that, if there is anybody that would like a complimentary copy of what I've done so far, because they might, find it of interest just to look at it, and you don't have to commit to giving me feedback. But so I'm all for getting something out there so people can, start talking about it. So if you just email me, and I'll get around. I will be in hospital about 3 or 4 days or whatever, but I intend I taking my computer with my laptop, so I'll be working from home.
So you're not even going to have a rest while you're in there, bro?
Sorry?
You're not even going to have a rest while
Nah,
you're
I mean, have you ever tried lying in bed for 24 hours? it's not a very enjoyable experience. But I remember that the surgeon that's doing my hip replacement is the one that did the left one 11 years ago. She's 78 now, so she's only going to be supervising. But I was in the middle of developing a syllabus for an exam board, and I'd just come out of the operating theatre, just come round. I was taken back to my room, and I had a phone call from the subject officer. So we had an hour-long meeting within minutes coming out of surgery.
in recovery.
In recovery. Hang on a minute, I've just got to reattach my leg. It's just fallen off.
Just ask for a light anaesthetic so you can get some work done while you're doing
Yeah.
while you're under the knife.
Yeah.
That's a common experience of people in the workplace, isn't it? It's like, oh, I just happened to be on the road underneath an ambulance. Oh yeah, that's great. If I could just consult with you for a second.
So, hey, yeah. Well, anyway, so you have my email address, Paul. So if anybody wants the copy, if you share my email,
I'll put in chat, right?
Yeah. So, and I suppose I really ought to dash. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Anyway, really nice chatting to you again. Yep. So sorry if I went on.
Thank you so much for turning up, Kevin, and
Okay.
Yeah,
No problem.
thanks for your time, mate. Thank you very much. I quite enjoyed that. Yeah, it was good work.
Yeah.
Thanks for
How long have you been working on it for?
Probably about 2 years.
Yeah. Well, you've done heaps, mate. You've been busy.
Yeah. So it's on and off. Thing about, well, as you probably know, running a business as well, you have so much paperwork, red tape, and obviously you've got to look after your customers and so on, and then and I find as I got increasingly older, I can't write in like hour, I've got an hour now. I'll write right next. I have to it takes me an hour to get going, and I like to immerse myself. And then after about 2 or 3 hours, it starts flowing, and you don't want to be interrupted for the next 4 or 5 hours. So I do long stints. And I've given up trying to snatch an hour here or snatch an hour, because you just write bad stuff and you have to revise it. It's but I think to some extent age is catching up. I'm 75 in a few days' time, so
I'm 75 now.
So you're slowing down to what, 100 pages a week, are you?
If only, if only. But the trouble, I'm at heart, I'm a physicist, and there's nothing I enjoy more than just reading about new developments in physics and new takes on physics and the history of science and so on.
Oh, yeah, you might tell me oscillating neutrinos and
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I see all these brilliant animations, YouTube animations channels explaining things, and one of the things I've wrestled with for a very long time is what is meant by information, and crucially, information underpins so much of physics, and it's just beginning to dawn on people that at the core of explanation of so much of physics is information defined in the way it was defined back in the days of Maxwell and Maxwell's demon and so on. There are some. There's a research group at Oxford University that's working on quantum computers. David Deutsch's group, is it Deutsch? The person that kickstarted quantum computers and so on, that is working in this area of trying to come up with a model that explains things if you accept that the merging of Shannon's information with Shannon's entropy with the physicist's entropy. That's been merged a long time ago, I've been reading research papers where they're looking on a microscopic scale to be able to power to generate energy from information. So it's the idea of Maxwell's demon done on a sort of like in a quantum bubble, where the equivalent of separating out the atoms or the molecules, the hot ones from the cold ones. So you end up creating a temperature differential from which you can drive a heat engine. So in principle. And it's having information enables, so it's the information of which are the fast molecules, which are the slow molecules, and it's that which is now being harnessed through in the nanotube quantum environment. This ability to be on a microscopic level. I mean, when you think of what they're doing with MEMS devices now, I mean, if you think back to how missile guidance used to be handled by gyroscopes, big mounted things that you have to spin up to get your gyroscope operational, and then when MEMS devices came in, where you could etch into silicon a lever that was made to oscillate up and down on a microscopic level, and that could sense lateral acceleration, and that's with that you had basically a microscopic gyroscope in a silicon chip. So it's and so I think sort of the next thing is coming along, and I've seen some experiments that have modeled Maxwell's demons thought experiment, down at the nano level. So you could think about having a device which has its own energy source, which is driven from information, but because everything is microscopic in a MEMS device, you're not worried about how you turn it, scale it up to the macroscopic level. And so I find this quite exciting, because for a long time I've been flying the flag for computer science in education, and I did make a half-hearted attempt when I was involved with writing the national curriculum to try and sort of bring some of that in, because what used to irritate me was this subject called ICT, Information and Communication Technology, which certainly in the UK was all about teaching Microsoft Office products, and to me, when it starts with information, what do you mean by information? And it's really the physicist's take on information. And I thought, wouldn't it be marvelous to create a computer science syllabus that not only dealt with complexity in Turing machines and explains the limitations of computation, but it says, hang on a minute, the future is about understanding and controlling information in a way that you can harness it to do useful things. And really, this is where computer science is headed, along hand in hand with the physicists, the scientists, and the technology. And so it creates something which is, you know, a top drawer subject, which is an academic discipline, which is worth providing education in from a very early age, rather than, you know, we want a conveyor belt line of future programmers. So we need to get them started in school, or we need to train up the workforce to be able to use Microsoft Word or spreadsheets or whatever. As meritable as that is, I think something's been missing, and that, you know, it's been a long process of trying, when I was able to influence the syllabus, to drag it in this direction. And we've only come halfway in terms of getting, certainly in the UK, a computer science recognised syllabus that universities recognise. And I think that's the challenge for academics, and I think physics is opening up big avenues into this sort of area of information and information processing.
It's very true.
Yep. So, yeah. Anyway, I've got to work out how to stop this. So I've got to go. But anyway, lovely. Yeah, lovely to be involved today. Thank you for listening.
Have a good, what's it, lunchtime for you now?
Sorry, it's 11:49. I've got to go.
Yeah,
drive.
you got to go.
Okay, okay, Kevin.
Place
all the best.
Have a safe
yeah,
time tomorrow, mate.
Okay, all the best. Yeah. Cheers then. Yeah, bye.